Good afternoon. And half a day. The Committee on General Government Operation, Appropriation, and Housing is now called to order. For the record, today is Wednesday, May 18. The time now is 2:04. Notice for this budget hearing were disseminated via email to all senators and all main media broadcasting outlets. First public notice was issued on May 11th, followed by May 16th. The committee will now hear Bill 276-36 CR, introduced by the Committee on Rules by the request of the I Maga'hågan Guåhan, the Governor of Guam, in accordance with the Organic Act of Guam, an act making appropriation for the operation of the executive branch of the Governor of Guam for fiscal year ending September 30th, 2023, and making other appropriations, establishing miscellaneous and administrative provisions relative to the Guam Memorial Hospital Authority budget. All right? I'd like to acknowledge my colleagues that have joined me this afternoon, and we have your oversight chair for GMH is Speaker Therese Terlai, and Senator Amanda Shelton, Senator Tello Taitigui, and Senator Joanne Brown. Those testifying on Bill 276-36 CR relative to the Guam Memorial Hospital's budget are invited to the panel. They are here already, and we have the director. And I'll allow her to be the one to, General Administrator to be the one to introduce the whole panel, just so I don't murder anybody's last name, okay? With that, the general rules for this public hearing. Written testimony shall be submitted to the committee. Please provide my legislative staff with your written testimony for photocopying. Testimony may be read, and lengthy testimony should be summarized to about 5 minutes. But if you need additional time, you will be given the time you need, okay? Those testifying will be allowed to present oral testimony. Once you're done, please remain in the room for questions or for additional testimony that may be desired by members of the committee. Questions and testimony shall be confined to the substance or nature of the agenda. The agenda today is the budget of Guam Memorial Hospital. Personal inference as to the character or motive of any senator or any individual testifying is not permitted. Any violation of this general rule of conduct will result in a move from the budget hearing. Proper form and quorum shall be practiced by all present in the public hearing room for this proceedings. Individuals who fail to maintain proper form and decorum will be restricted from providing oral testimony and will be escorted from the room. And I'd ask the panel, like I would ask my colleagues, if they feel there's any personal inference, raise your hand so I'll recognize it, and then we will move from there. When you speak, please make sure that the microphone is on and that you speak into the microphone. Other questions may be submitted to the committee for submission to the agency or department for response. Please state your name and your title for the record. I'll now ask the Sergeant Arms to swear you in the panel. If the panel will please rise.
Please raise your right hand. Under penalty of perjury, you all affirm that any and all information you provide today, whether it be verbally, electronically, and in writing, be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. Mr. Chair, Dr. Rose, you may proceed.
Thank you very much, Sergeant Arms. I'll now ask the director or executive director of the Guam Memorial Hospital, please introduce yourself and your staff that are here to support you. Thank you. And then do present your budget.
Okay. Buenas, Zanafade, Senator Joseph Agustin, Senators Speaker Therese Terlai, Senators Amanda Shelton, Senator Joanne Brown, and Tello Taitigui. Buenas. My name is Lillian Perez Posadas. I am the hospital administrator. To my left, I have Dr. Annie Badalio, who is our Chief Medical Officer, also known as the Associate Administrator of Medical Services. To my right is our Chief Financial Officer, Ms. Yuka Hechanova, and to her right is Mr. William Kando. He is our Associate Administrator of Operations. We are here today, but I also want to just take a few minutes to recognize the other members of our executive leadership, because they play a vital role with how we make things happen at the hospital and what we decide. And that is Dr. Jolene Uggan. She is the Assistant Associate Administrator of Medical Services, and also she has the role of the Associate Administrator of Clinical Services, overseeing the two clinical arms, nursing and professional support. Dr. Vincent Duenas, he is our SNF Medical Director. Danielle Manglonia, she is the Administrator of Quality, Patient Safety, and Regulatory Compliance. Don Rabanal, he is the Assistant Administrator of Administrative Services. Ms. Bell Rada, who is a registered nurse, she's the Assistant Administrator of Professional Support Services. Christine Tucaro is the Assistant Administrator of Nursing Services. And Lizelle Conception, she's the Deputy Assistant of the Nursing Services. So again, on behalf of the Board of Trustees, management, medical staff, employees and patients, we extend our gratitude for giving us this opportunity to defend, to present and secure the hospital's budget for fiscal year 2023. For the fiscal year 2023 budget subsidy request, we want to set the landscape premised on the 3 markers, and that's where we were from a year ago based on our fiscal year 2021 budget, where we are now, our current fiscal year 2022 budget situation, and going forward, how we envision to keep the hospital services effectively and efficiently operational with our fiscal year 23 budget. Just again to give the highlights of where we were a year ago with regards to the COVID surges that we've had. We've had like a total of about 4 COVID surges, but during the year of August 2021 to November 2021, that was surge number 2, and we dealt with the Delta variant that time. The surge number 3 started at the end of December 2021 with the Omicron variant and a fiscal year budget of 2022. Overall, during that period, we had a total of 3,074 patients admitted into the hospital that we treated during that period of March 15, 2020 to May 8, 22. So a total of 3,074 patients that we treated. In fiscal year 2021, we converted and we reconfigured over 100 adult inpatient acute care beds into COVID bed capacity. We enhanced the 14-bed ICU patient care unit into a fully functioning COVID-ready unit in addition to the 4-bed ICU bed capacity in Care 2. We retrofitted the labor and delivery and the OB postpartum rooms to accommodate pregnant COVID and post-delivery patients. I just want to again re-emphasize the fact that GMH is the only facility that services the maternal child health client population. We expanded our cardiac telemetry bed capacity from 24 to about 95 centralized cardiac monitoring bed capacity, separate from the 14-bed ICU and the 4-bed ICU unit in Care 2, and also the 14-bed cardiac monitoring capability in the emergency room that includes 2 isolation rooms and 2 trauma rooms. During the period of these COVID surges, we continued the outpatient cardiac clinic for non-COVID patients. We continued admissions and services and treatment management for the maternal child health patient population. In the calendar year 2020, 2,348 babies were delivered at GMH. Calendar year 2021, 2,056 babies were delivered. And in the calendar year 2022, from January to April, 680 babies were delivered. Although the total number of babies born annually has dropped by about 15%, we still care for these patients that come in who need the labor and delivery services. At the same time, we also enhanced and we expanded our telehealth, telemed capacity. And that really just increased the services that we can provide, especially for patients who are in the ICU level of care, that we can then link with the specialty doctors in the states who have critical care intensivist background. Highlights of where we are now from January 2022 to present: we resumed elective surgeries. We reopened and resumed our other outpatient services, such as the cardiac, laboratory, neurosurgery, radiology, respiratory, and so forth. And we are also preparing to add a short-term follow-up clinic services, especially for those areas that I just mentioned earlier. We're looking to open up also a podiatry outpatient clinic as a follow-up for those patients who are admitted for those conditions so that they continue to get some follow-up treatment. We just recently opened up a pulmonary outpatient clinic, and that's working out very well. We resumed the interventional radiology services for inpatient and outpatient diagnostic and treatment procedures. We enhanced and expanded our revenue cycle, revenue integrity processes, and providing ongoing billing and collections training. We mentioned it last year, that we are looking to implement the billing scrubber. We finally implemented that using a application software. So that's helping us with our billing and collection processes. We recruited some additional billers and coders, although we lose some, but we continued the recruitment of these specialized staff. We also recruited a medical health records administrator in an acting capacity, and we transitioned and upgraded our Power server from IBM Power 7 to IBM Power 9. We procured and installed 2 C-arms in our interventional radiology area. Going forward, our vision with the fiscal year 23 budget, we are still pursuing the national accreditation with the Center for Improvement in Healthcare Quality. This is the CIHQ accrediting organization. We chose that instead of the Joint Commission. And for the reason that it is, it is CMS affiliated and CMS deemed status. One of our other goals is to continue to maintain the CMS conditional participation certification, and that we will launch the new EHR, the new electronic health record system, electronic medical record system. We are going to go live in August of this year. It would have been sooner, but COVID kind of delayed our process, but this is the goal. It's August 2022, we will go live. We also want to reduce the off-island staffing solution resources, such as the travel nurses, and that we're looking to invest in an affiliation relationship via either a memorandum of agreement or a memorandum of understanding with a medical school program that is accredited by the ACGME, that's the American Council of Graduate Medical Education, to see if we can establish a medical residency program for postgraduate medical students. And then just recently, we had some discussions with the Sharp Grossmont Hospital that we're looking to have some kind of an agreement affiliation with them where they will send some of their seasoned and expert clinical nurse specialists to Guam. A lot of the nurses in that hospital in San Diego are from Guam. And so the person that we spoke to the other day is also from Guam and is just reaching out to us, GMH, to see if they can give us some resources with regards to not just staff nurses, but also those clinical nurse specialists who are experts in their area of practice to help us and to augment our services at GMH. So we're looking to invest in some of our resources and some of the funding to help expand and enhance and also elevate the performance and the service that we provide. So that's my presentation, my testimony, and so now I'm going to hand over the PowerPoint slide presentation to then Ms. Yuka, who is our CFO. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Administrator. I'd like to also recognize the presence of Senator Tony Ada and Senator Jim Mullen this afternoon. Please continue.
Are they going to put the slides up?
Soon, I
Ready?
hope.
Oh,
There you
There.
go.
Okay. Next slide.
Next slide, please. So GMH is requesting $30.5 million in total, 18.7 from the pharmaceutical fund and 11.8 million from the general fund. That's our total requested funds. In just to give some context to the amount of appropriations that we've received in the last few years, in FY20, we were appropriated 28 million. We received all of that except 1 million. In FY21, we were appropriated 28.8 million and received all of that except $865,000. In FY22, our appropriation is 18.3 million, which is significantly less than the other 2 years. Our operating revenues are projected in FY 2023 about $132 million. We're targeting $11 million a month in net patient revenues in FY23. Currently in FY22, as of April, we're averaging 10.2 million a month. So we think that's a realistic goal considering some of the enhancements and improvements that we're making on our new EHR, a new patient accounting system. We are improving our processes and revenue cycle management. That is a daily activity that all the staff are very engaged in. We've set up a revenue integrity department. Part of improving our revenue cycle is we set up a revenue integrity department to shift the focus from denial management on our bills and claims to denial prevention and charge capture. So we're putting a lot of our effort up front, in front of the billing, and so when it goes out to the insurance companies, they're a lot cleaner. It helps us get paid faster. We're also working on updating our room and board charges, and we've started that process by actually activating the costing module in our financial management system. Next slide, please. So our operating expenses have increased dramatically in the past couple of years, and we also project that for FY23. And if you see on the slide above, it's really our clinical divisions that have been impacted the most with the rise in expenses for medical staff, nursing, and professional sport divisions. We have operating expenses largely from the nurses' pay increases that recently happened back in August, and pay differentials we've had to implement for all of the clinical staff. Hiring more physicians, pharmaceuticals, supplies, utilities, equipment, and fuel are all items that have risen sharply in costs. And really hospitals, we're not alone. There are hospitals across the nation that are facing historic losses due to the same issues that we're facing, where costs have just really grown a lot in labor, pharmaceuticals, equipment, and supplies. Next slide, please. So GMH's financial posture as of April 2022 is shown in this slide. Our cash has greatly improved, mainly because of our recent influx of cash from the ARP funds and also provider relief funds. We've been able to make a lot of payments to vendors where we've been so behind. Our payables are still growing just because of the costing issue that I've talked about earlier. Our gross patient revenues have increased dramatically, mainly because we do have more patients and they are sicker patients, but we've also made a lot of improvement, as I talked about earlier, about charge capture in the beginning of the billing process instead of waiting for it at the end. And so likewise, our net patient revenues are also improving. Our collections are improving. Our government subsidies have gone down a little bit because we were not appropriated as much funds as the earlier years in FY22. And of course, our operating expenses are continuing to climb, as I explained earlier. Next slide, please. So the COVID-19 grants are all summarized here. So since 2020, when the pandemic began, we've received a total of $65.7 million. The bulk of it comes from the provider relief funds, which is direct cash assistance to hospitals across the country. We received the most in FY 2022. We've had to apply for these funding distributions, and so far we've received $23 million from this fund. The ARP funds, we've received $20.6 million, and FEMA, $10.5. We're still working with FEMA on grants for cost reimbursements for the travel nurses, for COVID test kits, and some extraordinary laundry costs that we've incurred during the pandemic, and for vaccine clinic costs. So those are the three main grants that we receive for pandemic relief funding. Next slide, please. And I'll hand it off to Mr. Kando.
Good afternoon, Senators, and half a day to the Guam community. This slide is showing basically the entire personnel budget by division, including the vacancies. So if you start at the top, 12 o'clock, and work your way clockwise, you're looking at professional support at $19.6 million, 19%. Medical budget is 11.4 million, 11%. That does not include contracted physicians. DOC is at 2.4 million, 2%. Operations division is at 11.4 million, 11%. Fiscal, 6.5 million, 7%. Administration, 3.2 million at 3%. And nursing at 48.1 million, or 47%. That does not include the contracted travel nurses. And to the upper right-hand corner, kind of summarizes in total direct patient care at almost $81.5 million at 79%, and support is a little over 21 million at 21%. Next slide, please. Further detailing the HR staffing situation of our status of our budget. So we're looking at, on the pie chart to the left, these are the warm bodies by division, comprising 1,194 warm bodies. So starting at close to the top, administration, 23%, Department of Corrections, 24 warm bodies at 2%. Fiscal services, 100 warm bodies at 8%. Medical services, 38 at 3%. Nursing, 578 at 49%. And operations, admin, 193 at 16%. And to the right, you can see the vacancies. There's 144 vacancies. DOC has 13. We have 13 vacancies for DOC clinic, and then GMH, 131 vacancies. These include split positions as well. And again, the pie chart to the left doesn't include contractual medical and travel nurses. Next slide, please. So these are ongoing CIPs or projects that are in the pipeline. They're planned for the future. So we all know that the EHR, our new EHR, is in the implementation phase. We are still ongoing with testing, training, and planned launch by the end of Q3 of this year. That continues. The Z-Wing demolition is commencing with a ceremony. It's already commenced, but we are having an actual demolition ceremony planned for tomorrow, and I think many of you have been invited. So this is package 1A. This is actually phase 2 of the Z-Wing. Phase 1 was actually the abatement phase. So this is a phase 1A of the demolition, and it should be done sometime in the month of July. It'll be demolished. It will also be accompanied by a package 1B demolition, which is a smaller demolition on the second floor, right above the area that we plan to salvage. And then there will be a retrofit package and a parking expansion package as well. We have ongoing one-to-one replacements of our air handling units, and these installations and commissionings of 21 units is ongoing Q2 through Q4. Plus, we have planned procurements in progress for the ED and ICU units HVAC upgrades. This is so that we will enhance their capability to respond to emerging infectious diseases such as the COVID-19 that we've been responding to with the negative pressure aspects. The laboratory roof upgrade is ongoing, in progress, and we're planning additional phases to improve the roof, the A and B wing rooftops. We're able to proceed now with those packages because our designs have been completed. We are proceeding right now with our ED trauma security Sally Port construction. This will be done between May and July of this year. Our main electrical distribution panel and sub-panels annual maintenance is being done in May and June of this year in collaboration with GPA. We have the alternate care site FEMA Public Assistance Development Grant that's in progress. This is a $3 million package where we're enhancing that facility for COVID response. Our procurement for our angiography and hemodynamic machines, we're replacing. This is our angio suite. We're upgrading. We're replacing these systems. This procurement is in progress. We're in collaboration with the AG's office. So it's going through a review process before we actually let out the IFB. The liquid oxygen tanks removal and replacement project is underway, and we anticipate completion by Q2 of next year. The removal and replacement of our boiler number 2, we're planning for its replacement. We tried to just make repairs to its boiler tubes, but we need to replace this with a new boiler, so we're planning that procurement right now. And then the removal and replacement of our main electrical distribution panel and sub-panels, plus one of our 1.6 megawatt generators. We are going to be working diligently to find a funding source to finally remove and replace this system. And then we have many other medical equipment purchases and other types of equipment that we need to plan. Some of these are like our anesthesia machines, just various, all of our different nursing units. We collaborate with them to make sure that we know what their needs are based on useful life of the equipment, and we try to plan those procurements as well. Next slide, please.
This last slide, again, is just to kind of give you an update, an overview of where we are with regards to our goal to achieve accreditation via the CIHQ accrediting organization. And we launched the self-assessment last year. We had a little bit of a delay in getting it completed because of COVID again, but the managers in each department completed their self-assessment. From that self-assessment, the accreditation team reviewed what the findings are and identified what are the opportunities to improve, to prepare for the mock survey. So this is our roadmap, our path. And so again, the education, the self-assessment, and internal improvement opportunities are ongoing. We just completed a mock survey with the facilities and environment of care and life safety. One surveyor came out May 2nd to the 4th, completed the mock survey in 3 days, and we just received the written findings and citations. And so we're going through that report to see what corrective actions, and what improvement opportunities we need to then roll out. And then the next mock survey is scheduled for the end of this year, sometime between October or up to December 2nd. We haven't yet received a confirmation date, and it will be a survey on the clinical side of the operations, and that will be with a doctor and a nurse surveyor. They will come out, and so we'll see what then they find in terms of the clinical services, the processes, and the practice that we then provide. And so once they complete that mock survey, the end of December, we have 6 months to apply for the actual survey. And when they do receive our application for the actual survey, they will come unannounced. So we're preparing for that. So that is the plan in terms of achieving accreditation. Thank you. We're here to answer any questions, and I'm sure you are all probably having some questions to ask us, so we're here to answer.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Posadas. Basically, all you're asking for is $12 million more than last year, correct?
Yes.
And
Yes, sir.
And that'll ensure the pay raises and everything that keeps Guam Memorial Hospital operational and safe for the people of Guam.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I really don't have that many questions, but I'll ask your oversight chair. She's got the floor.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the presentation by GMH. It was very clear. My first question is regarding, the governor's original request was for $22 million versus the 30 million that you're requesting. So I understand that the $8 million difference is for some shortfall?
Yes.
Could you please
that's correct.
explain that shortfall? What does that mean?
So in projecting what our expenses would be for FY 2023, we came up with about 165 million, and then deducting our projected revenues and other funding sources, including what the governor put in the executive budget, we were still short by $8 million.
Okay, so it's not an actual shortfall that has occurred.
No.
It's just you need more money than what the governor had requested.
Yes, it's projected.
Okay,
Yes.
so I'm not going to call that a shortfall anymore. It's just you need more. You want more.
We want more.
You want 30 instead of 22.
Yes.
Okay. And then, okay, there was, so the list of the CIPs that you put in the PowerPoint presentation, some of these are already procured, right? So they should not, I mean, they're already procured, so you've already got a funding source for those.
That's correct.
All right, and that includes the electronic health record, the Z-Wing demolition, some of these HVAC upgrades? All right. Are there any, I know you talked about accreditation by that accreditation body, but I want to just know about CMS. So we also need accreditation by CMS. And have they pointed out any issues in the facility or staffing that are not addressed in this budget?
What were identified in the last CMS survey, we've already corrected those. And so they can show up anytime, and when they do another survey and they find whatever deficiencies, we will certainly make sure we correct those.
Okay, so there's no ongoing, long-standing, CMS issues?
Not at this
One
point.
of them used to be the EHR, but that's being resolved.
Correct.
And okay, so that's great. So we can say confidently, CMS, we've addressed all the CMS issues. And we
From
are
the previous
good with
surveys.
CMS
Yes, ma'am.
accreditation. All right.
But keep in mind, again, the facility is old, so
Yeah, so
we're-
when they come by, they might find something else.
they might
Yes,
find.
yes,
right.
so I'd like to also say on that issue, Senator Terlegi, when they did visit us on one of those visits, we did share with them the Army Corps of Engineers assessment. So they know, they are aware of the challenges that are ahead of us, and these are aligned with that assessment. And so when they do come back, I'm sure they'll be looking to hear about our progress towards fulfilling that focus on that meeting, that assessment.
Okay. All right, so the overall, so we're talking about just the 30 million is really just the government of Guam's contribution. But as you pointed out, you have your own operating revenue that you're bringing in, and you're bringing in grants. And so really, we're talking about $175 million projection, right?
Yes, correct.
Operations, including grants and operating revenue. All right. So the $12 million difference between last year's budget and this year's budget, if you could just explain, I mean, I think you said that there were increases in all the different areas. Maybe never mind that question then. I guess that's the explanation of the increased 12 million?
Yes, primarily for the increases, the pay raises for the nurses, and we have differential pays for the nurses and other clinical staff as a recruitment and retention strategy.
All right, but the nursing pay was already covered last year.
No.
So-
So we projected the nurses' pay to be about 6.3 million. We were appropriated 1.1 million for nurses' pay.
Okay, so that's an additional 5 million.
Yes.
All right, and so you're saying for the other categories, it's something like that. What, okay, what about, so you explained also the $21 million more in operating revenues that you're projecting, and that's because you've improved certain of your collection systems and the costing of
Yes.
some of them?
And we're continuing to improve things every day. We've made changes organizationally even. Of course, the Revenue Integrity Department has been a big bonus for us to really get in front of the bill before it goes out.
All right, and did you then bring in what you estimated in the last fiscal year, or this fiscal year?
Yes.
In
We've
operating
actually
revenue.
exceeded by a little less than 10 million so far in net revenues. So although we have a net revenue, we're still challenged with the collection part of it. So we're working on improving the collections of those net revenues as well.
Okay, great. So 10 million, more than what you estimated.
Yes, approximately.
That's fantastic. Okay, then all right, that's the nurses' pay, you just discussed that. You talked about the FEMA reimbursements, some of those. So my understanding is that now, this current period that we're in, is this reimbursable as COVID related? It still is?
Yes.
How long will
Yes.
that continue for FEMA reimbursement?
That will continue, Senator, as long as we're in the
Public health
presidential
emergency.
declaration as well as the governor's public health emergency.
Okay. All right, and then the list of capital improvement projects again, so that is pretty much, I think you've shown that those are covered by either capital improvement grants that you have received from different sources or your operating revenue, right? None of that has been allocated, I see, from these general fund revenues or the pharmaceutical fund revenues.
Yes, combination of those, as well as some of the stimulus funding that we've been receiving.
Stimulus funding, right. Okay, and then, all right, so I just want to know, so we've increased the costs of medical, I can't remember what you call it, but hiring of medical staff, right? Would you say then that the specialists that we need, you have been able to procure? And you will be able in FY23 to procure?
We procured some of them through the telehealth, telemedicine, yes. Mhm.
All right, but the funding is not an issue to procuring specialists, right? Because you have the funding and you have the flexibility in the statute to contract with them in whatever amount you see fit?
Yes, on a contractual basis, yes.
Okay. Okay, so then my final issue is just at the very beginning of your presentation, you were talking about the list of accomplishments, and I want to congratulate you and thank you for all of these. My only question is on these outpatient services that we are expanding. If you could just explain the theory behind those. I guess I'm guessing it's either because we want to bring in more revenue and we are going to increase outpatient services, or we have a gap in the community that these services cannot be provided, and so GMH is trying to fill those gaps.
Thank you for that question. It's not so much that it cannot be provided, but it's the follow-up that the patients sometimes are not able to get the appointments. And so we're making it available at the hospital so that they continue the continuity of care and also to prevent readmissions into the hospital. So, we're making it available, and absolutely, you're right. It's a revenue-generating opportunity because the reimbursement for outpatient services is greater. So it's an opportunity for us to generate revenues.
And some of these specialists are hospital-based specialists. So it's difficult to procure some of these specialists because they're rare. And sometimes it's easier for the hospital to employ them because they can do most of their duties are inpatient service, like the critical care specialist who happens to also be a pulmonologist. It's just more efficient for her to run a pulmonary clinic in the hospital. It also gives access to the community that doesn't have the ability to go to a private practice. And some of the private practice clinics wouldn't be able to support in volume those specialties. I think over time, there's going to be a lot more consolidation because one is they're more difficult to get, they're rare, and the government or the hospital actually can utilize them more widely.
All right, yeah, I fully support that. Of course, I think, we should just be conscious of, we're not in business to compete with the private providers. However, when it comes to getting specialty care and lack of specialists, I really believe that GMH can play a huge role in bringing them in, supporting them when our community might not be big enough for them to make the same salaries that they would make back there. But if we add on to that hospital service, we might be able to attract them and keep them, and then we would have that specialty provided here. So I see that, and I know that some of the models that we've talked about over the many years as to, how to make GMH more solvent was, of course, providing services that we can bill, right, to the entire community. So I support this. I'm sure there has to be a balance, but I think if you see a need for specialists on Guam and you see that these patients are not being provided this service due to other factors, even though we might have like one of these is a podiatrist on Guam, we still need outpatient podiatry services at GMH because of the volume, you're saying, of patients in that area?
Well, again, they're low access patients, so the private practitioners can service the outpatient podiatry service quite well, but when we have inpatient services to people who lack access, they'll need follow-up. So if you think about diabetes and ulcer disease, it's not just you get hospitalized, it goes away. It's somewhat of a longer-term follow-up, and some of these patients wouldn't be able to go to the private clinics. The private clinics are taking them, but at a cost to their clinic. So again, there's going to be a bigger need to follow these patients in the outpatient unit so we can prevent them from being readmitted. But they are, unfortunately, typically low access or no access patients.
Can you just clarify that? No access or low access patients. Do you mean those without private health insurance? Do you mean those without Medicaid or those on Medicaid? Or
well, sometimes they're in between, so they're getting Medicaid at some point in the future if they qualify for that. Sometimes they don't have the right paperwork, so it's a process. It's not something that happens typically in a day or two. So they may need a couple of follow-up visits until they get those things settled, and then they may have better access in the private sector.
is this, you said added a short-term follow-up clinic for appointments for discharged patients. Is this different than urgent care? This is a whole other new...
Urgent care is different. Urgent care is patients who, may have urgent needs,
Right.
but not emergent.
Okay.
So those are patients who walk in for...
Yeah. I just mean, is this a new department or a new...
Well, it's really more,
division?
again, the same kind of thing. I'm in the hospital, I'm acutely ill, I need a follow-up visit. But if you call my clinic, you'll get a follow-up visit in 3 or 4 months from now, but I need a follow-up next week. So I think that's the gap that we're trying to fill for
All right,
these
I see.
patients.
So instead of keeping them in the hospital for 2 more weeks just so that we can follow up, you can let them go home and then follow up, and there will be that continuity of care, complete that, and then they can wait the 3 months for additional follow-up if they
Right.
need to. Okay. All right. Well, I thank you, and I appreciate this, and I see this is a big vision. These are big vision items, so I'm glad that these are, I know we've talked about these over the years as well, and I'm glad to see them being implemented, so thank you. The only other thing I was going to ask, so does that mean you will have lapses from this current fiscal year because of the 10 million additional revenue that you've brought in, or not?
We will likely use the funds for next year if possible. So yes, there's a possibility there will be lapses. We really just got the 10 million we received in, I think it was March, and the 13 million we just received from the Provider Relief Fund actually came just about 3 weeks ago. So it's rather current. We didn't even expect to get that much. I wasn't expecting that much, so it was a nice windfall. But we need to also, with the Provider Relief Fund, there are, depending on when we receive it, there's an expiration of when we need to spend the funds. And then 3 months after that, we have to report it. So there's a reporting portal and everything where we have to put all the details of how we use the funding. So when that time comes, we're going to start looking at our general ledger and see what we've charged that we can move to another funding source since it came in.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Senator Tello, do you have any questions for the panel?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good afternoon to my colleagues as well as the panel. Thank you for all your hard work, especially these last couple of years. You know, and it sounds like you're getting some more breathing room here by opening up other services at Guam Memorial, which I'm sure our community is very appreciative of. You did touch on some of the questions that I had, or the speaker had some questions I had, and one of them was regarding the accreditation with the CIHQ that you have in place right now. And you talked about the mock, because that was the mock survey, which was recommended. I know it was recommended by OPA when they did your OPA audit report to have this mock, and that's the presentation you provided us at the end of your, this one here, right? The roadmap? Okay. So this isn't a time frame, right? You're trying to do this within 6 months to try and complete this. This is just a mock survey, right? Where, was it also recommended by the CMS that you do a mock survey like this to prepare yourself for the, what is it, the audit accredited organization group? Go ahead.
Okay. The CMS is a totally different certification entity. That's
Right,
the
the
federal.
Medicaid and
because
Medicare,
we
right? Right.
Yeah, but they don't tell us to do a mock survey.
Right.
When we applied for the CIHQ accreditation organization, they recommended that we do a mock survey, which is really a great opportunity, because this is where we can learn where we are in terms of our deficiencies, and that then it gives us the opportunity to improve for then the actual survey, the real survey. So again, it's just a recommended activity to get us to identify where we are so that we can improve, get the corrective actions ready so that when the real survey comes in 6 months after the clinical mock survey, which will be sometime around October or December, depending on when they decide to come and do the mock survey
So
for the clinical site.
So I can assume at the end of this road, where it says accreditation at the very end, is anticipated in December? Because right now you have fiscal environmental life safety from May 2nd to the
Right.
4th, and that has been completed?
That was completed.
Okay. So the other one is October to November. I guess that's the following of the, follow the yellow brick road, but here you have it in black. So you follow it all the way through, and then by time November comes, it says, is that what accreditation is?
That's still the mock survey.
Still the mock.
survey for the clinical side of the house.
All the way up to November.
Right.
So then when do we anticipate the final?
6 months after they complete the mock survey, which
Okay,
will
so-
be around December, they complete the mock survey.
2023?
6 months from that, we submit our application,
Mm-hmm.
and so then they will come announced.
How much does it cost for this accreditation with the new company, the CIHQ? This is a new accreditation. You're no longer doing the joint commission and going this route. What is the cost that GMH?
We're
will-
estimating that the initial unannounced survey, which we expect next year, around $13,000 for the professional fee plus the travel expenses.
13,000?
So that's 13 is what it is tagged right now, but it could go up, it could go down. But that's right now what the price tag they have shared with us.
And if I'm not mistaken, this is lower than what the Joint Commission
Joint
was
Commission
charging.
runs around 40 to 50,000 for an
40,
initial
50,000.
survey.
Okay, and but with the Joint Commission, I think they're having some issues too with CMS or some concerns that were brought up with them, and
Yeah.
but then again, they have 80% of the U.S. hospitals, that they accredited, so this is our first time with CIHQ, so
For Guam.
I'm curious to see what the end result will be on this. But I'm very happy you're doing this mock that was suggested, even by the OPA as well. Okay, I was talking about some of the issues that were earlier by the speaker, that was brought up during the Joint Commission. And you did mention that these concerns, including medical orders, reporting clinical results of tests, diagnostic procedures on a timely basis, the implementation of practice to prevent healthcare-associated infections, staff competency, and the maintenance of medical records. All these concerns that were brought up last year, or even brought up by the Joint Commission, they have all been resolved.
It's CMS, not Joint Commission. A Joint Commission has
But
not
it's-
done any survey on us
Okay.
since we lost the accreditation in 2018. So that must be CMS report that you're reading
No, I'm actually reading the Joint Commission's.
online?
Yeah, it says the Joint Commission found GMH was out of compliance on certain standards, including medical and everything that I just mentioned.
Okay.
That was in a report.
That was
a
in
media report.
2018. Because that was the last time, we lost
Okay.
accreditation
In
in
2018.
2018.
Okay, and since then, we're still waiting for we're still waiting for accreditation right now.
We're going through the process of
Okay,
accreditation.
from 2018, okay.
It's a different organization.
Is the CIHQ guided by different regulations? I mean, you're going from Joint Commission that used to be in place, and then now you're going to CIHQ. Are they, requiring a different type of standards, or?
Basically the same, they're just a different accrediting organization. It's just a different, they're following essentially like the national patient safety goals and standards, and that's a very, across the board with all health institutions, hospitals that we have to adhere to. But the CIHQ is really deemed CMS also. So they're recognized by CMS as credible accrediting organization. It's an option that we have, and so we chose the CIHQ over JC.
Right, and there was another one, I think an H something, there was another
There's
company,
about
HH.
a total of 4 accrediting organizations
Oh, I
at the
saw that,
national
there's
level.
only 3.
Right.
Okay, but there's total of 4. Okay, I'm sorry, I thought there were 3 only. Okay, so it was mentioned, in the Century Healthcare Center Act of 2021, that was Public Law 3656-56, and it was mentioned that it would be about 21 million, according to the Army Corps of Engineers, about 25 million to rehabilitate the current facility. So what is GMH plan of action towards addressing the cost of this issue?
Yes, a lot of these CIPs that I've been referring to that have been actually completed over the last several years, plus these ones that have been ongoing, and then ones that we are planning in the near future. These are all aligned with that assessment. They said 21 million to basically to keep the hospital going for the next 5 to 7 years until we build a new hospital. We actually internally in looking at that assessment, we projected that cost to be higher than 21 million.
Just talk into the mic, please.
Yeah, we project that it's going to be more than 21 million that we're going to need to fulfill those needs. I would say that we've probably spent during COVID, relative to CIPs, we've already achieved at least $10 million. So, you know, I believe we're going to exceed the 21 million, and we're well on our way. I would say we're probably about 40% complete in meeting the needs of that assessment. By the end of this year, calendar, we'll be approaching 50% completion.
And that would assume, yeah, and that's probably why the cost is going up, because of the delay in the construction cost. It's of more, yeah, going up. But you mentioned earlier when the speaker asked about these projects that for re-accreditation, that it's coming from funding from ARP money or grants that have been already provided to Guam Memorial Hospital?
As well as operational funds.
As well, okay. What is the percentage of operational funds that are you going to place toward this?
I'm not sure, Senator. We would have to look at that and analyze it.
Okay, so it'd be good if you let us know, okay, especially the oversight chair, on how much you plan on using on percentage-wise moving forward. It was mentioned here in your budget presentation on the budget request sheet. It doesn't have a number, but it says where it says FY 2023 budget request. The nursing's amount budget in FY 2022, you had received 47.8 million. And then your request in FY 2023, 55.7 million, almost about $7 or $6 million more. Does this include the traveling nurses, this increase?
There is about $3 million we budgeted for travel nurses for FY 2023. Our goal is really to reduce our reliance on them, but in FY 2023, we're projecting that we will not need to rely on them so heavily, and the rates will come down, their hourly rates.
Okay, so, but right now you've estimated 3 million set aside just for the traveling nurses in 2023, and that's
Yes.
reflected in this request of 55.7, correct?
Yes, it
Okay,
is.
so it does include the traveling nurses?
Yes.
Okay, but still that's an additional 3 million on top of that. If you're looking from FY 22 to 23, what's the other funding for?
The nurses' pay increase,
And what is that total for FY 23 increase? For the
about
main-
6.3.
6.3 million.
Yes.
Okay. Can you tell me what the Guam Memorial Hospital Healthcare Trust and Development Fund is, and what do you use that for?
I believe is that the gaming tax
Yeah, that's the name of the fund.
funded by the gaming taxes?
I'm not quite sure. I found this in the
Yeah.
cash balance report that was given to us.
We haven't gotten any of that funding in
Well, right now I'm
Several
showing
years.
that, yeah, and I'm showing that there is a balance of 1.7 million, $1,704,62.81 in the balance of that account. And as of April, 21,385.39 was deposited into that account for the month of April. So I was just wondering, with this balance of 1.7 million, the Guam Healthcare Trust and Development Fund, I'm just surprised you guys don't know what this is about. So maybe you want to look into that?
We used to get that funding, really the last time we received anything, I think it was maybe 2019 or 2020 when we received anything from that.
Well, there's a balance in there.
But now there's a balance.
1.7 million, and they put another 20,000 in there this month. So you might want to look at that funding too as well, find out, it was created for the Guam Memorial Hospital, I'm sure, so I'm sure you guys can use that funding.
Yes,
So if you
thank
can
you.
look into that, appreciate it. And how much money is DOC, do you owe DOC, or does DOC owe you? No, nothing.
They pay us.
I'm sorry?
They pay us.
They pay you, right? Do they owe you any money?
Yes.
How much?
For past medical services, about 1.8 million.
That they still owe you?
Yes, from...
And how many years have this been?
That's
Is
from
this accumulated over the last 3 years, 4 years, or
2015, 16, and 17, I think.
all the way 2017?
Yes,
It's 1.8.
about 1.8.
And that's only 2017. Is there anything on
No, it's
18?
cumulative from 2015 to 2018, I think.
Okay, 2018. 1.8 million. Okay. We talked about, Take Care and insurance company signed a memorandum of agreement for a third-party firm to perform an agreed-upon procedures engagement in reconciling claims from January 1st, 2012 to April 30th, 2017. What is the final settlement amount? And was it necessary for Take Care and the hospital to enter into a payment plan agreement?
So we did settle on an amount of 4.9 million, but we're still disputing 2.4 million that was in the report. And so we're already working with Take Care to apply the credits and adjust accounts, and also they're paying us. But the 2.4, we're drafting a letter to formally oppose that amount, to dispute it.
I see. When do you finalize on getting any of this funding? I mean, it's been a while, so has there been anything deposited at Guam Memorial? Or
Yes, they've been making payments.
Okay.
Yes.
And how much is that? What is you said there's a 2.9 floor.
2.4 million
sorry.
credit to them that we are disputing.
Oh, okay. So that's almost half then, right? Of it all being paid off.
I'm not exactly sure what their balance is on their receivable, but they have been making regular payments.
Okay.
We actually have a pretty good relationship with them right now.
Okay. The OP reported that in FY21, well, actually it has to be 2020 to 2021, that the cost of the contract travel nurses total about 20 million. I just want to verify if these numbers are correct. From 2020 to 2021, travel nurses cost about $20 million, of which 11 million was funded federally, and 9 million was funded by Guam Memorial Operations Funds. Is this correct?
That part that says it's funded by GMH is the portion we're actively applying to FEMA to reimburse us. And it's been a slow process. We meet with them every week to see where we are and how much we can recoup of the travel nurse costs as much as possible.
I appreciate that. I know you do your due diligence on that one, but
Every week.
Is it 9 million though that was used from the operation funds?
Yes, that sounds about right.
So we are anticipating, hopefully soon, very soon, we can get reimbursed. So that additional 3 million for travel nurses in 2023 can cover it. You guys can cover that.
Yes.
That'd be great, right?
Yes. We're really trying to get
Plus,
as much
plus,
as we
plus.
can out of FEMA.
Right now, you're asking for about 8 million more, if I'm not mistaken. If you guys can get that full FEMA, there goes your 8 million that's needed.
Yes.
That we don't have to pull out, because I tell you, everyone's coming here asking for an increase that's substantially more than the average, 2% of estimated growth, economic growth rate. But it is coming to us like in millions and millions of dollars. So I'm sure you guys will do your best in getting that. So other than that, the pharmaceutical funds, I know that in FY22, we allotted 100% of the use of these pharmaceutical funds direct subsidy. So usually, if I'm not mistaken, please correct me if I'm wrong, but if 75% of these funds from the pharmaceutical funds are to cover for services provided for Medicaid recipients. Now, in FY22, we allowed 100% to use for subsidy. Can you tell me of the money that you're receiving from pharmaceutical funds, how much is being spent toward the Medicaid subsidies, or recipients, I'm sorry, Medicaid recipients?
We are just using the pharmaceutical funds for operational funds, so it's a subsidy. We're not using it to pay Medicaid bills. The Medicaid payments are coming directly from public health and DOA.
The law that created the pharmaceutical funds has clearly an estimated amount and to pay for Medicaid recipients. 75% of the funds to cover bills for services provided. And so you're not using any of the pharmaceutical funds
We are.
for that, for recipients for Medicaid?
Not specifically,
Okay.
no.
I'll talk with the oversight chair with regards to this, because it's legislation that I was looking at what governs the pharmaceutical funds and how it's supposed to be spent. So,
Do you have anything else, Senator Tairui?
I think there is one thing I wrote in here that I have a question with. Pardon me for being a little bit slow. Okay, got that. Oh, okay, the speaker already asked that question. So I appreciate, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Senator Tello. Senator Brown, do you have any questions for the panel?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and certainly good afternoon to our team here from GMH. I have to tell you that the tone of the engagement is rather pleasant compared to the one we faced a few years ago. Hopefully you walk out and not feel frustrated as we did when the legislature was not so gracious in addressing the needs of GMH, certainly at the time when a lot of work and was desired to be put in place to address the physical infrastructure of the hospital. And with that, I wanted to ask you, Mr. Kenna, with regards to you had outlined the key fiscal upgrades that you're addressing at the hospital and the panel there for your electrical panel. Is that your main panel that you have collectively had so many problems over the years? Is that what is literally being replaced? That's been there since
Yes, Senator Brown, that is the one that we're
1970
we're
forgotten.
planning to replace it. Of course, until we do replace it, we're collaborating with the GPA to do the annual maintenance. Every year we're working with them, and we're replacing parts on it just to maintain it, to keep
Right.
it going. But you know, we have to move on. We have to replace that system, and so we're going to be working with you know, internally and also with the governor's office to find a funding source for that project. We do have designs in hand, but of course they would have to be, you know, reassessed and recertified. But we want to proceed with that project at our soonest opportunity.
What do you estimate the cost would be? And I know I appreciate the partnership you have with GPA in assisting, you know, 'cause you've had electrical fires and other problems with that over the years, certainly in assisting the hospital and keeping it going, so to speak. But what would it cost to replace that system?
So it's the system, it's the main panel, the sub panels on the various floors.
Yes.
It's the 1.6, and then also the road to the left of the power plant coming around. And so the full package back in 2019 was about $7 million.
So we just anticipate it's probably just going to cost maybe a little more these days if you were to pursue that. With regards to the other replacements you're doing, I always have that in the back of my mind, your water tank that's, you know, only so many feet away from your generators. Are you going to address the relocation of one or the other? I assume maybe the water tank versus the generators in that area, because it'd probably be a little less expensive, and you got to make sure your generators are covered, obviously.
Well,
Has that been looked at just for the safety factor? I mean, if anything ever happened in there, I just always,
Yes,
I've
Senator.
always thought about that since you took me on a tour. You know?
So our emergency generators are in their own structure. So if we're able to do this project and move this main panel, a new panel, just on the other side of the wall, build a new structure for that, we are basically mitigating against not only the water tank right there, but also, you know, if there was a big event with the main panel, you know, some kind of an explosion,
Sure.
it's not taking out the other systems within that power plant. So that project will address that.
Well, I'm glad to hear that, because trust me, that's always been at the back of my mind. I mean, you always hope, obviously, these things don't happen, but if they did, I mean, when they designed it, I don't know that they really thought about it. They just want to consolidate everything probably in that space. Maybe that's the only space that they had, but obviously that was definitely don't want to mix electricity with water, and certainly not with regards to the operational base of the hospital facility. I see with the 12 million, I mean, our chairman kind of made it sound like no problem, you got the 12 million, that would be great, but I'm just looking at the overall, you know, as we've gone through, we're only really through the first section of our budgeting process. And, you know, recently with the announcement that DOE is going to get a pay raise at around 30 million, of course, earlier this year, we had the law enforcement at around another 18 million that's being added to the general fund cost. We also have another, now you mentioned 6.3 million to address the pay increases for the nurses. So just that in and of itself is adding to the government of Guam overall cost another $54 million on or about annually. And I just want to take note of that because while we're hearing there's, you know, we have this interim period where the government seems to be flush with an awful lot of money as a result of this pandemic. That's the unfortunate reality our people have dealt with, and certainly those of you at GMH are very much in the forefront of addressing you know, this issue within our community. But at the same time, it's been an incredible financial windfall for the government of Guam. And certainly while we have this increased money flowing, it's wonderful, but you know, I don't know where it's going to be next year or the year after as this money dissipates and decreases in our government, how we're going to cover the additional cost of government that's grown so substantially in my mind in the last couple of years. I just want to take note of that because I always think in managing an operation, this is not the standard for Gov Guam, and those of you that have been in it many years know that generally we have to figure out how to manage with less every year. And we've experienced that. We've experienced having to cut positions, or as positions were vacated, not filling them or cutting the needs for, you know, getting equipment and other things that you critically need, and having to put it off because of the amount of revenue. And I just think it's something we need to be mindful, because I don't think, you know, as they say, everything that goes up, it eventually is going to come down. And I'm very concerned, even though while some of my colleagues are very happy to spend money these days, I'm very concerned that we're going to end up in a situation where we're not going to have the amount of money that we're appropriating. And I bring that up because the most recent budget hearing we had with Department of Corrections, they relayed to us that the increased cost just to them specifically for their corrections officers was going to cost them another 1.8 million in their budget. And they weren't given any additional money. They had to take it out of their existing fiscal year. And when we see that, great, okay, they're able to cover it so far. But then they owe $400,000 to their vendors. They owe, as you relayed, you know, we understand the years of, you mentioned 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018, that they owed money to GMH. In most cases, some years they're almost paying nothing. And I'm sure it's because they didn't have the revenue to pay the hospital for the services, and the hospital during that time really had to cover the costs for Department of Corrections. So to me, I'm already seeing the cracks in the system, and I just think we need to be mindful of it. Certainly if the ultimate decision of the body is to provide this additional cost, keep in mind, almost every agency that's come before us so far has asked between a minimum of $2 million to $9 million to $10 million each. And I don't know how those numbers are going to add up this fiscal year, that this legislature is going to be able to even anywhere near authorize that, and yet at the same time authorize $54 million to the budget with regards to increases. So it's just something to be mindful of. You mentioned with regards to traveling nurses, for this year, you're looking at another $3 million that's being set aside, as you mentioned, for the traveling nurses. Is this, again, still to be able to respond to the pandemic, or is there anything else you use the traveling nurses for? Is this the primary purpose to which you brought them on board? And were you ever using them prior, or is it just because of the pandemic that you've had to bring them in? I don't know if GMH has ever had to use them before for anything else. Perhaps, Ms. Posadas, if you could enlighten us.
Thank you for that question. We were using travel nurses pre-pandemic from another company, but of course the hourly rate was a lot lower than what we are paying now. And so during the crisis for these travel nurses, we were paying $225 per hour. We've managed to negotiate and have brought it down. At this time, I think it is now $150, $175 per hour, and we're still pushing to decrease it further because, you know, across the nation, travel nurses are also then being cut. They're no longer needed, in many of the hospitals throughout the U.S. And so that gives us the leverage to then negotiate lower rates.
Well, I don't know. I mean, it's only really because of pandemic I became aware of such a thing as a traveling. I'm sure maybe you have traveling doctors, traveling nurses, but What would you have needed them for? It's just to meet your certain quota that you needed to have available at a, I'm sure it's any hour of the day, you have to have a certain amount of physicians and so forth available just in case for the patients
No,
that
we're
you're taking
utilizing
care of. What would
them.
you normally get them for? Is it just to supplement your staff, or was there anything specific, skill set that they had that added to anything you particularly needed that you didn't have on staff?
Correct, because we were, without these nurses, particularly in the ICU, we can only sustain probably a 6 or 8 bed ICU. And, they augment, and we are then sustaining 14 bed ICU.
Okay,
that
so
they don't
primarily in your ICU areas where you would use them.
specialize in the specialty areas, correct.
Okay.
And even telemetry, and in the interventional radiology services, we utilize them. We utilize them still, some of them, not a whole lot, in the emergency room, but primarily critical care and telemetry.
And so you're saying now, perhaps as the demand is going down nationwide, you'll be able to get I
Lower
can't say
rate.
lesser price in bargaining for a traveling nurse, but essentially, you think that cost will continue to go down? I'm sure there's a cutoff level, because I'm just the cost of travel, living expenses while they're here and so forth, going in on top of just
Right.
what their hourly or regular salary would be.
That's our goal, is to decrease, and we're also trying to really recruit the UOGBSN grads.
Yes.
That's
Yes,
the
of course.
other
That would be the
strategy.
desire, and keep them
Right.
long-term.
Correct.
I wanted to ask with regards to your drug testing, and I don't know if I'm reading your budget right, I didn't see any appropriation for drug testing.
Drug testing?
Yeah.
Okay. What's the question?
What do you have appropriated for drug testing, and do you do any regular drug testing? Because I want to make sure my doctor or nurse is not on anything.
We do pre-employment, drug testing, drug screening.
Yes, I
That's
know
one
we
of
all
the
do
requirements.
pre-employment. Did we do any regular employment, drug
Reasonable
testing during the
suspicion?
school year?
We do
Yes.
reasonable suspicion,
Not school year,
yes.
but during the
Right.
rest of the work
We
year,
do.
yeah.
We'd like to do random also, especially for those who are in the testing designated pool positions, such as nurses and doctors. And so we're going to...
What at GMH, I mean, it's easy for other positions we identify that we would know as a designated. What would be a designated, of course, doctors, nurses. What other
Right.
critical positions do you have that fall under the designated?
Respiratory therapists, the clinicians primarily, because we want to make sure that they're not performing their duties under the influence of any drug
Sure.
or any substance, because it's patient safety.
Okay, and have you done a random drug testing in the last year or two?
We haven't. We haven't done the random testing. So that's a program that we'd like to set up. So that way, every quarter, we can at least do a random selection of those positions that are in the testing designated pool, so that randomly they can then get tested. We haven't yet launched that program. That's something that really would be very helpful to have.
Okay, and did I read your budget correctly? What do you have requested for drug testing for this year?
That's part of the laboratory testing. And
No, I
so-
understand. What does it fall under? Because I read the budget, I didn't see anything under that category, so did I misread it, or? I understand, but
It
there's
would be
also-
under HR. Our HR department is in charge of the drug testing.
Yes,
So it would be under their contractual, which they requested about $23,000 for FY23.
well, if that's what you have it under versus the normal category, I mean, every GovGuam budget has drug testing as a specific category in the budget. That's why I'm asking, because this doesn't show anything. I mean, there are a number of executive orders the administration also issues, but there is a previous executive order that does mandate regular drug testing of these positions in the government of Guam on an annual basis. So the only reason I'm asking is obviously we see, and I'm sure you see the results of it, we have such a prevalent pandemic of drug abuse on Guam. And it's unfortunate, it's growing, and it's getting cheaper on the streets to buy it, which just tells you that it's flowing. And so I just want to make sure we set a standard for our public officials that work for the government of Guam. And I've always said, anyone who receives a paycheck from the people of Guam is a public official and should be held to a higher standard. And particularly because you are in the field that you are of healthcare. I think it's important that we follow that process and make sure that our people, particularly in the designated positions, are regularly tested. Hopefully, my objective in looking at it is always as a deterrent. It's not to catch. I hope we don't want to catch. We don't want to think that people that are out there that are supposed to be taking care of us are abusing drugs. But that's a reality too. It's a very high-pressure job. Some people drink, some people smoke, some people take drugs, some people scream off their head. I don't know. But we just need to be mindful of it. So I would definitely would like to see not just GMH, but all our other government agencies be consistent with regards to that, concerning the designated positions. I don't have any other key questions at this time. I did want to ask one other question with regards to, sorry, just another question here with regards to your ARC funding. What is the exact amount? Because there's two different presentations, one for 20 million and one's for 17 million. Could we just clarify? Which is it? How much funding did GMH receive for their your ARC funding?
From the governor's,
Yes, yeah.
ARP is 20.6.
Okay, so that's the more correct figure than the
Yes.
17 that's designated, because we had a report that listed at $17,276,089. April 30th, 2022. It's a monthly report. Because all we receive publicly really is just a breakdown of the totals. We'd have no idea what the money's being spent on. Do you have a listing for GMH?
I can send you the details.
That provides a breakdown? Could you
Yes.
provide that to the committee? I think that would be helpful,
I can.
because we in general have not received breakdowns of how the funds are being expended since they were initially provided. That would be very helpful. But I think we need to probably correlate why the most recent April report has a different figure. I wanted to ask one other question, and then I'll conclude my inquiry. But with regards to your operating rooms, I know that was an issue in the past to have enough equipment available that was working to accommodate all of your operating rooms. How many do you have, and are you able at this time to fully use all of them if you needed to?
We have 4 OR suites. A part of so we have gone through we want to upgrade the ventilation system of the OR, and we are buying medical equipment for the OR as well. We're currently replacing all the OR surgical lights. We plan to, we collaborate closely with Dr. Badallo and of course the OR, and there's various medical equipment like anesthesia machines that as they surpass useful life, we're going to need to replace them. But relative to the HVAC project, it's already gone through design, where we'll be able to have a OR suite, an OR where if we have one problem with an AHU, we're not losing the whole OR.
Right.
We're going to be able to isolate each of the suites, and so we're very, very eager and look forward to implementing the construction phase of that project. That'll be coming also, that's also in the pipeline.
Well, we certainly look forward to those improvements, and then also with your Z-Wing, that you're going to be able to demolish the whole facility now, is the whole Z-Wing coming down, or are you still saving a portion of that for your operations?
Just, the majority will be coming down on the first and second floor, just a small portion, near the cashier's window.
Yes,
and
I remember, yes, where you have your staff that are still there operating.
The
okay.
former comm center, and then it's about 2,500 square feet that we're going to be salvaging for additional office space to help on the finance side, to decompress some of their areas like the business office that we're looking at. Yeah.
And I remember you had said that that's like the oldest section of one of the oldest sections of the hospital, original sections of the hospital when it was constructed.
More than 50 years old. It's the former convent.
Yes.
It's just one piece of what
we
used
can
to
join
be.
that club, 50 and up. We can join that club.
Yes.
I appreciate it. Thanks so much for your response to my questions. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Brown. Senator Adder, do you have any questions for the panel?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Perhaps just a couple. I'm looking at the ongoing CIP and in the pipeline. Is there anything here for the labor and delivery room?
Are you referring to CIPs or?
Yeah. Are there any upgrades for the labor and delivery? No.
Not so. Probably, if any, the labor and delivery room is a concern because we are also, it's almost like their C-section room is almost like an OR suite, and so we are collaborating with Dr. Badallo on that as well. So that there may be some future renovations in the L&D. There is none planned for the OB ward or the nursery because again we're going to be planning to build a new hospital.
Yeah, I understand that, but I mean, I was just listening to the earlier testimonies about, there's going to be a lot of, we're demolishing the Z-Wing now, and then, we're going to be putting, $20 million into to upgrade different parts, right? Do renovations, electrical panel. So I'm just wondering about the labor and delivery. So that's not included in any of the CIP plans?
There is minor renovations that have been done and are ongoing, but nothing major like the OR project. We are going to be replacing the air handling unit. There's actually 3 air handling units that serve the C wing. So when we replace those, we're providing upgraded ventilation for admin, OB ward, and even part of L&D and dietary.
I see.
If I may add to that, Senator,
Sure.
a lot of the CIP repairs and replacements are really based on the Army Corps of Engineers assessment. And so we're putting those as our priority. And the L&D area was not identified in the Army Corps assessment as priority to repair, to fix, and to, replace. So a lot of our CIPs are from that.
Yeah, but that's for current, right? I mean, when we look at what we're looking at to remaining at GMH is for perhaps maybe the next 5 to 10 years, right? I mean, realistically.
Correct.
So eventually, we're going to have to see improvements made to labor and delivery, right? So, I mean, priorities, yeah, you're right. Okay. So the other question I had was the electronic health records. What's the status on that? I heard that, in past media reports that the system's there, but the system's there.
No, we had to pause because of the COVID, and a lot of our subject matter experts, these are our nurses, our clinicians, pharmacy, they've had to kind of build the landscape for their clinical documentation. So we had to put a pause on that one because of the surges. Now they're back into doing that, completing that phase, and they're testing the integration.
Okay.
And they are about 85% complete with it. And so the target date to launch it, to open it up, is August 8th of this year.
Of this year? Oh,
Yes.
That's great to hear.
Yes.
Right.
We're excited.
Okay, and then also, is GMH or the CME responsible for the refrigerated container that is currently there at the hospital?
Well, it's an extension of a morgue, and so we share it. Primarily, it was really to assist the CME, particularly because of the COVID patients who come in DOA, and so those are really the coroners kinds of cases. But we're sharing the morgue, and so it's a joint responsibility. It is on our premise. We are providing the utilities, the electrical source for it. It is on our parking lot. So yeah, it's a joint responsibility.
But is that an agreement between GMH and whoever the container came from, or CME?
It's an agreement between GMH and in terms of a collaborative effort.
Yeah.
That was part of handling the COVID fatalities.
From the onset, right?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
because,
So
and the
part of the
reason why I
response.
asked that is because, word got back to me that the Port Authority, I believe, is asking now for the refrigerated container back. And I think there's still an issue, right, with surges of, remains that are still placed in there because of overcrowding in the hospital
morgue.
and the CME areas. So have you communicated with the Port Authority and keeping the container there until?
We communicate through the Unified Command, the Guam Emergency Operations Center, which the Port Authority is a part of.
Right.
So, Lillian, before she can't make a decision, on this emergency response without actually going through the Emergency Operations Center and even through the governor's office.
Yeah, but I believe that the governor still has us in a declared emergency, health emergency.
Correct.
So for the Port Authority to be requesting the container back, are we an emergency or not an emergency? So I'm just kind of trying to figure that out because the remains that are there, what are we going to do with them? Should a spike come if they take the container back? What are we going to do?
Right.
Because I know you guys get remains both from Naval Hospital and
GRMC.
GRMC.
Right.
So I mean, perhaps maybe communication with the EOC and whoever you guys need to communicate with that, perhaps you guys should just wait until we really don't need the container up there.
Correct,
Before they
yeah.
decide to lift it up, take it away, and, they get surprised with the contents of it, so.
No,
Yeah.
they won't be surprised. Those remains will be processed accordingly. But this is the second container, because the first container that was installed, the air conditioning went out, so we had it, and that was donated, and so we replaced it with this new container.
Okay, that's great.
Thank you.
The only other question I have is vendor payments. Do you have any outstanding vendor payments, and what's the aging on that?
Yes, we do have vendor payments. So as of April 2022, I think our accounts payable was at 22 million, and that's in the slides.
And what's the, yeah, I saw that in the slide, but what's the aging there?
Most of that 22 million is for travel nurses.
Travel nurses, but.
Yes.
So take away the travel nurses, I'm not worried about the travel nurses, I'm more worried about local vendors being paid for medical supplies that the hospital receives.
Yes, we've been paying, especially with the cash that we recently got, we've been working very hard to pay the vendors.
So local vendors are not owed anything?
Holding, like, deliveries?
No, so they don't, GMH doesn't owe them any money?
Yes, we always owe money.
You always owe money?
We
Yeah,
always
okay.
owe money.
Yeah.
The question is
So,
how much?
How much and how long? How long do our vendors wait, especially the small medical suppliers, the distributors? How long do they wait for their payments before are they waiting 45, 60,
Yes.
90 days?
They're waiting up to 90 days, yeah,
And
sometimes
that's-
more.
And that's the concern, right, is that how long would they be able to sustain their operations with GMH not paying their obligations within, 30, 60, 90 days? When you look at Gov Guam, if we don't go and pay our taxes within 30 days, we get charged interest and penalty. So, do we have our vendors now start charging Gov Guam for interest and penalty when Gov Guam doesn't pay our bills? I mean, that's what it comes down to when we look at how are we operating with our local vendors? What are we doing to keep our local vendors operational so that they be able to pay their bills, their employees? Because just like GMH, we need to pay, our employees, and we need to pay whatever supplies that we get. But I mean, 90 days to get a vendor paid, especially our local vendors, that's very concerning. And I hope that it's perhaps something you guys can address and see what is it that you can do to bring it down from 90 days to maybe 45 days. Something that is, a compromise between GMH and the vendors. I mean, perhaps some of them may be saying, no, we're okay, don't worry. 90 days is okay, but those that cannot afford to wait, especially now that, everyone is just trying to rebuild their companies. Everyone is just trying to rebuild and bring employees back on board, give benefits back to the employees of, medical, dental, whatever it may be. So if that's something that you can look at and, reprioritize, I mean, I'm sure the nursing, the travel nurses company can, wait for $1 million versus the local vendor that supplies the salines and the bandages and, the gauzes and things like that. So just something to take into consideration and look forward to and, working it out with your vendors. But Mr. Chairman, that's the only questions I had. Thank you guys for coming down to present your budget. I appreciate
Mr. Chair,
it.
I just have one quick question. I know you're looking at me. I just have one quick question, that's all.
Okay,
And
one question.
Yeah, December 14, 2021, the legislature had an oversight hearing with Guam Memorial Hospital regarding the, it was discovered that many positions received above recruitment and promotions. So is Guam Memorial still implementing such practices after the oversight hearing?
We continue to, Senator, and then it's part of our recruitment strategy, especially in the clinical area.
Above step. You're still doing above
recruitment.
step.
Absolutely. Yes. We have that tool available, and yes, we're using that tool to recruit, especially the clinical experts and the resources that we need for the hospital. So it's working. It's working for us. When we use that above step, we're able to recruit people. If we don't, they turn us away. They don't want to work for us. They don't want, if we start them at an entry level, step one, they say thank you, but no thank you. They don't want to work at the hospital when it's at that entry level. You know,
No,
so we
I can
gotta give them
understand, I
credit.
can understand, Lily, if it's for medical, but when you're doing administrative stuff for above step recruitment, that makes like, that's a questionable, very questionable.
For which positions?
And administrative side, on the health side, I can understand, but on the administrative side, it's very questionable.
Well, if
So-
they have the talents and these credentials that we need, we bring them
Or
on.
they have the
particularly-
political backing, I'm
Well,
pretty sure.
And if we're moving
Well-
forward with accreditation, we need those individuals to help
Well,
us
we're
out.
keeping an eye on it. We'll keep an eye on it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
All right,
Thank you.
thank you. On the issue that my colleague brought up about the vendors, provide us with a listing of who you got. How much are we looking at total? Maybe a couple $1 million or a lot?
A lot. I
Okay.
can provide a listing as of April 30,
Please.
what our payables look like. We can
Sure,
provide that.
please. I appreciate it. And with that, the committee will conclude this budget hearing with the Guam Memorial Hospital Authority. The committee will continue to receive testimony. Please address your written testimony to the Committee on General Government Operations and Appropriate Housing and submit it via email to Senator Joe S. and Agustin at gmail.com or to my office located at Rand Care Building, second floor, Suite 203, 761 South Marine Corps Drive, Tamuning, Guam. Si Zeus Masi for your attendance today, ma'am. And participant and gentlemen. And for those at home, thank you for watching. This budget hearing on 276-36 CR relative to the Guam Memorial Hospital Authority is duly heard and is now adjourned. It is now 3:39. Please be safe and take care.